What was your cringiest sexual experience? I was a teen who got caught masturbating by my mother. She told my dad, and later when he got home they gave me this big speech about masturbation. They're super religious and talked about how I'm wasting my seed and God didn't create the sexual limb for recreation. It's only for procreation. That it was so humiliating I suppressed it in my memory until now. My grandparents caught me jerking off. They told my folks. I once had sex with this guy and it was taking forever. Usually not a problem. Except it was super boring. After like 45 minutes of straight missionary, I was like, "Are you at least close?" He replied, "I'm not some high school chump." We both left unsatisfied. I was getting a BJ while laying on my back. When I said I was about to come, she let go of my dong, causing me to shoot nut on my own face. Dated this girl sophomore year of college. I was getting ready to go down on her when I noticed my biology lab safety goggles were right next to me. I couldn't resist, so I put them on and said safety first. She swooned. Cringy? Maybe. Worth? For sure. Went home with a Tinder date. Kissed and got naked. And threw up in her bed before we could have sex. Met a Tinder date at her place. Surprise. She has 2 young children of which I was unaware. Extremely weird for me, but it's just a dinner thing, not a hookup. I thought, this woman is being aggressively sexual while shooing her kids away every 5 minutes. Atmosphere makes it clear she wants me to stay the night. So she goes to put her kids to sleep. So far it's been uncomfortable but not a deal breaker. Then one of her kids calls me daddy. I'm in my early 20s. I freaked the duck out, made an excuse, and left. Edit. Wording. Also, ugh. My inbox. Was 17. Fat. No girls would talk to me. Made Tinder. Matched with one who sent me nudes a few times and she was kind of gross. Looked like she didn't take care of herself. From a town over, telling me she wants to bone, so I tell her to pick me up. We park in a parking lot in the middle of nowhere. Go in the back. I start kissing her and it tastes like cigarettes and horse. We start boning. But she keeps making weird fake porn sounds and it completely ruins the mood. Go for a while completely zoned out and my D goes soft and numb. Lol. She starts to vacuum suck it so hard a small vein bursts and my entire D is swollen and purply bruised. She starts to drive me home whimpering in pain. Keeps talking about not taking me home and kidnapping me. Tells me her schedule to hang out again. Abuse counseling every day and dropping her kid off at daycare and picking him up so we can squeeze in a 40-minute session at lunch. I just say okay and hope to God she drops me off at my house without stealing my kidneys. She drops me off at my home and tries to kiss me, but I just hover arm hug her by bumping my chest against hers. Go to my room. Throw all of my clothes in the basket across the room and lay down. Feel sick. Go throw up. Take a shower and scrub my entire body. Stay home from school the next day. I had crazy massively drunken sex when I was 18 at a Christmas party. It was my first time. We went at it for hours. We were out front of my house in her car when I saw my dad leave to go find me. He did a U-turn at the end of the block and pulled back into our garage. I yanked up my pants and went inside. My dad came in and said we were going to have a serious talk tomorrow morning. I woke up the next morning in abject terror with a screaming hangover. I went to the bathroom and heard him coming down the hall. He came in and said, "If you're going to be messing around, wear a rubber." That was it. I told him I was really hungover and he told me to put my finger down my throat and gag myself. I started to and he started laughing and said maybe not, and left. I could hear him laughing down the hall. I looked at my head and it was covered with dry, flaking menstrual blood. I had it all over my lap as well. I threw up immediately. First sexual experience? Really? Really bad. Edit. Fixed menstrual spelling. Thanks iOS spell check. Also, thanks to everyone who called that out. You really rock. First time I signed up on OKC, I immediately got messaged by this chick who said, "Hi, my name is Sarah, and I smell horrible." I didn't believe her, but she really smelled bad. She gave me a blowjob in my dad's basement and I never saw her again. Came after making out for a few minutes, all clothes on. I came on my high school girlfriend's belly twice in one evening while she was attempting to help me lose my virginity. First time having sex, dude asks can I try something? Proceeds to shove 2 fingers in my ass. No prep. No forewarning. I nope the duck out of there. When I get turned on I have the tendency to sneeze. Anyway, if she wasn't moist from the foreplay she was after I sneezed on her and spittle sprayed her. Maybe banging a girl on top of raw insulation? I sure was cringing afterwards. Banged a guy from rehab on my just deceased mom's bed when we were supposed to be cleaning and looking for important documents. I was making out with a girl. Neither of us had clothes on. In the middle of it I remembered her mentioning to someone else earlier in passing that she doesn't sleep with anyone unless she's in a relationship with him. So I stopped. I'm a ducking idiot. First time I had sex with a guy that I'd been going on dates with for a couple weeks asked did you think I'd have a big D? Right after we finished. Had a girlfriend that wanted to do anal. She was pretty adamant so we tried for a bit. Lubed up real good and did a lot of butt play. When we finally got around to the deed her butt tore a little and she was bleeding on me. I called it but she wanted to keep going. I had to tap out cause blood isn't sexy to me. She thought I was being rude. I couldn't win. I had a boy over after an excellent date. It was obvious sex was on the agenda. So he comes back to my place. Under the guise that I have a really nice TV. Commenced TV watching. We watched The Office. We started making out. He started going down to Clam Town. In the middle of dining, he said enthusiastically, "Whoa, it's really sexy that we are doing this to The Office." Meanwhile, Michael Scott is basically staring at this boy's ass through the TV behind him. It was not sexy, but maybe he had meant it as a joke, despite the look that he'd had on his face. So I'll let it slide. And it wasn't long before he was in position to, as he had said, duck my brains out. He started thrusting, and as you may have predicted, the noodle was limp. That doesn't stop him from thrusting his hips wildly, hoping that perhaps his D would follow suit if he faked it enough. But alas, it was not to be, so he flipped me over, in the hopes that a glimpse of the full moon might trigger a response. Still nothing. I am flipped back over and after a few more minutes of what is essentially just pantomiming sex, and then, abruptly, he stops. He sits straight up, a look on his face that appears to convey that he knows now what he must do to harden his D. He jumps to his feet and shouts, "I have to call my mom," and sprints out of the room, leaving me naked and incredibly concerned. Hearing his mother's voice did not harden his D. He left later that evening without actually ever getting himself into my V. He claimed the call to his mother was not in the hopes that her voice would arouse him. I am not sure I believe him. I fell asleep masturbating. My brother walked in, laughed at the sight of me holding my D with porn still playing. My parents came to see what he was laughing at. They laughed too. My brother woke me up by throwing a shoe at me and I was so embarrassed that I immediately got dressed and left the house for a few hours. My dad told my grandparents and promised to tell everyone at my wedding. The first time my GF and I had sex, in the middle of both of us climaxing, our stomachs suctioned together and made a loud farting noise. Context: I drink a lot of coffee so sometimes I get a serious case of palpitation and get gag reflexes especially when I'm full. So yeah, me and my GF just finished eating and I ate a lot. So while doing the deed, I started feeling a little nauseous. I finished and managed to get to the side of the bed before vomiting. She felt really bad because she thought it was because I thought the sex was disgusting. She even asked if she smelled bad down there. I tried to tell her it wasn't her fault and it was only because I was so full. She didn't believe me. Haven't had sex since and it has been 2 weeks. Throw away for this one. A friend and I decided we would look up escorts on a popular site used for finding these types of things just for fun and found a good looking prospect based on her photos and then said hey let's message her and tell her to come over. We were both young guys and thought it was all fun and games until she shows up in all her very disappointing glory. We actually came up with fake names and everything. Well here we all are so I volunteered to go first. I get in the bedroom and she immediately asks to see my D to make sure I wasn't a cop so I obliged. We started doing the do and I immediately regretted it. She smelled of ass sweat and cigarettes. After about 5 minutes of this grueling experience my D went soft. Like it was telling me no more of this. I refuse. I said, you know what? I'm good now. She said, but you haven't came? To which I replied, yeah, it's okay, I don't want to. Then quickly ran out naked into my living room and told my friend, get in there. Just get in there. He went in and did his thing for a few minutes, then basically did the same thing I did. We paid her and she left back to her boyfriend, who was sitting in an old beat up pickup truck in my driveway. My friend and I have promised to never speak of this story to anyone else. I was at a party with my then ex-GF in high school. Both of us are pretty drunk and she wants to have sex, so we go to the upstairs bathroom, lock the door, and turn off the lights. I lie on the floor, no condom, and she proceeds to ride me. I have narcolepsy, so I tend to fall asleep at inappropriate times. This being one of those times, I fell asleep for who knows how long. I wake up to the sudden urge to come. I yell, get off, push her off me. She hits her head on the counter, and I come all over myself. Sad moment. The first time I initiated sexy time and tried to seductively pull down my boyfriend's, now husband, underwear, the elastic waistband slipped out of my fingers and slingshot him in the balls. Sexy time did not happen that night, which was the opposite effect I was going for. Edit. Fixed a word. I was drunk one time and a male friend of mine, I'm a straight guy, convinced me that I didn't know if I would like having my D sucked by a dude until I tried it. So I did. My D remained flaccid the entire time. Then he convinced me to let him try licking my asshole. So I also did. I'm not even mad because his logic is irrefutable. Back in college, this girl came over to my dorm to Netflix and chill. It was going well and we had plenty of snacks to eat. After a while things start to get a little frisky and I slide down to eat her out. She's having a good time. I'm having a good time. Everything's going great. But then out of my stupid ducking mouth comes the words, you taste like potato chips. We're both just stunned for a second at how I could say something so stupid. She buries her face in her hands and goes, oh my god, that is such a turn off. She's about to get off me, so the only thing I can think to do is to shove my tongue back in her. Surprisingly it worked, but for the rest of the night I knew that's all either of us were really thinking about. This is how I learned to keep my mouth shut during sex. I had a one night stand with a guy who had shaved his whole body a few weeks before and the stubble gave me a rug burn all over my body. The sex was terrible and I just remember being in pain from this dude's body stubble slowly tearing away the top layer of my skin on my body and on my vag while he was grinding awkwardly on top of me like only a drunk white frat boy named Chad could do. He was also the guy that didn't give a shit about whether his partner came. I woke up super early the next day and couldn't find a ride. The challenges of one night stands before Uber, and he woke up and offered to give me a ride on the horribly awkward ride back to my house. Chad, don't remember if that was his actual name but it fits, told me he couldn't give me his number because he was moving to San Diego tomorrow. I told him the sex was like grinding my privates on the bark of a tree stump and I never wanted to see him again. Of course 3 months later, I ran into him at the same damn bar. As we were about to start, literally 1 inch away, she sings fishy fishy in the tone from the McDonald's commercial song for the McFish sandwich. It was an ad that kept coming on Pandora that day. It was funny for her, but definitely threw me off. My friend told me the key factor to make a woman feel good is being funny, so I came home with a girl in the middle of the night. On the way to my bedroom I told her, you're going to walk funny tomorrow. She's giggling and asks me the obvious, why are you so big? Full stop. After which I locked the door and said the sarcastic, no, I'm going to cut off your legs. She started crying. Kind of ruined the moment. Third date with an older gal I met on a dating site. I'm old, too. We went out for dinner somewhere, and then we went back to her condo. One thing led to another, etc. She was a bit overweight, which led to her having a deep buried tight V. Most of you haven't experienced this yet, but it's common in well upholstered postmenopausal women. There was no way I was getting more than the head and her, particularly with a condom on, so the situation called for some oral machinations. I gave her a few licks on her couch, and then asked her to sit on my face on the floor, with which she duly complied. Fairly quickly she tensed up, and declared, this is out of my comfort zone. And I thought, what? Passing gas? She answered. This is out of my comfort zone. And I guess I noticed there had been a tiny bit of sibilant whistling, which I thought was just whistly pussy queefs. But nope. She was quite taken aback by all this. It didn't bother me in the least. And so, she rolled over on her tummy, where she remained. She allowed me to compliment her on her ass, and how it looked like she was 35. This is a go-to phrase if you want sex with older gals. They love to hear they still have a knockout ass. Is there anything I can do to make you come? No. Is there anything you want to do to make me come? No. And so the evening ended. Both of us with congested pelvises. I'm still puzzled. The first time I had sex, she took a condom out and went to put it on me, but she played with me for a little bit first. I had never had a condom on before, so wasn't sure if she had slid it on or not yet, and we just laid there awkwardly for a minute and I lost my boner and she thought I didn't like her. Agreed to have sex in the shower with a random hookup. She comes over, doesn't want to have a shower. I proceed to shower with her in the bathroom the whole time. One of my early experiences. Guy I was dating had a large ding dong with a generous amount of foreskin. He didn't tell me that he had recently healed from tearing his duvet. I was bad at giving handjobs as is. What 18-year-old girl isn't? Ended up tearing his wang wrapper. Blood everywhere. Took me years to feel completely comfortable touching a dingling again. Right in the middle of ducking my then girlfriend, I think it's the perfect time to say, "So I hear you suck a lot of D." In response to someone telling me she used to duck some random guy I met at a recent party. While I was ducking her, what in holy crow was I doing? Why would I say that? Needless to say, it ruined the entire night at that exact moment. Couldn't get it up. Not much else to say. However, all the lights were on. No music or anything. Just silence. Except for my phone buzzing because my mom was calling wondering where the hell I was. I think the combination of all that stressed me out. Plus it was my first time and I have body image issues. That was probably why it was no bueno. Oh god. One I can finally answer. It was the after party for my matric dance. A couple of buddies and I went to a friend's house. We had a couple of drinks and before you know it we were gossiping like little girls. When 2 AM rolled around we decided to get some blankets and sit on the couches. I was sitting on a couch with my friend Clarice. She decided to lie down and put her legs on my lap. We kept talking but eventually I felt her start rubbing the inside of my leg with her foot. It was subtle at first and covered by the blanket so others couldn't see. Eventually she may as well have been groping me. Her toe usage was actually quite impressive. Instead of reacting like a normal person I kept staring at my phone and pretending not to notice. Eventually most of the people in the room decided to turn in for the night. Clarice saw this as our chance and sat up and snuggled right next to me. I continued to fiddle on my phone and she stared directly at my face. I still ignored her and she gave up. Every particle of my being still cringes to this day when I think of how I was so engulfed in my phone that I missed the opportunity to get some. At 19 years of age, I'm in the midst of losing my virginity to a good friend. Wrong hole, she quips. In retrospect, it went in pretty easily. I'm quite sure the situation wasn't mutual. BF and I had just finished on the couch one afternoon. When he gets up to pull some dinner rolls out of the oven, I hear him say "OWW duck" and rush in to see what happened. Turns out he burned the underside of the tip of his D on the oven door when pulling them out. I should have been more caring, but I burst out laughing. He was out of commission for about 3 days after that. Edit. Maybe not cringy for me, but definitely for him. We were both 17. I was the weird goth girl and he was a football player. He pursued me for a few months and I eventually agreed to hang out with him one night. When I got there, a couple of his friends were passed out in the living room and he was pretty drunk. I decided to stay anyway and we wound up having sex. It was just awful. He could barely keep it up. He was sloppy, and no part of it was close to enjoyable for me. One of his friends also walked in a couple times and wound up telling the rest of the football team about our little encounter. Not appreciated. So that was cringeworthy. But the cringiest part is that 12 years later, he still messages me once a year or so to tell me it was the best sex he ever had and still thinks about it. That's sad and I don't want to hear it. Was 16. With the guy I lost my virginity to. I think it was maybe our second time having sex. We were having trouble finding a rhythm as we were in the backseat of his car, and after a few minutes of fumbling around we finally got the hang of it. And as though I had no control over it, I looked him in his eyes and said, "Are you feeling it now, MR? Crabs?" We ended up laughing it off, but I was mortified. Still don't know why I did that. Same guy a few weeks later called me mommy while we were starting to get frisky, and I was so turned off and uncomfortable we had to stop. Saw him on Tinder recently and his bio says success auditorying, so it's great to see he's doing well. Dude referenced Shrek in the middle of 6. Me. Trying to be coy about something he had said. Really? Him. Really? Really? Big yikes. My brain just decided at that moment to remind me of Shrek and all the times I've watched it as a child. And then Shrek is love. Shrek is life. And then I didn't want to be having sex anymore. We laughed it off. But it's still something I think about when asked to describe a cringy or awkward moment. Edit. Added more information to clear up confusion. When I was a teenager, my mum knew I was having sex with my girlfriend. She was like, "X23, you need to make sure you are wearing a condom," which was awkward enough by itself. But then she was like, "I bought some for you. They are in the bathroom." Duck me. Cringe through the roof. Then one day my girlfriend and I were home alone. Went looking for mum's condoms and couldn't find them anywhere. So I literally had to text my mum asking her where the condoms were, so I could then proceed to bone my girlfriend. She replied instantly that they were in the bathroom under the sink. Except that they weren't. So I didn't get boned and it was super cringy having to ask my mum that question. To make things extra spicy cringy, we later found out that my little brother had been using them to masturbate, which is why they weren't in the bathroom. My ex called me a League of Legends character's name when I was giving him head. The character in question is Eri, if you all were wondering. One time I got my balls stuck in a Gatorade bottle.